Welcome to the EQ Fit podcast. Our mission is to equip people to prosper in every aspect of their life. Whether you're at home or in the workplace, we explore practical ways of improving success, satisfaction, finding balance, and building enjoyable and beneficial relationships. Thank you for joining us. I recently had somebody come to me and ask a question that I think is very important, and it's going to end up being the topic of what we talk about today. The question was, Steve, I feel like I don't have the mental agility that I need most of the time. I feel like I'm struggling. How do I get more mental agility? Well, I asked them the question, what do you mean by mental agility? And we got to the point where the real thing that they need is emotional agility, because emotional agility is going to create mental agility. It was the emotions and the emotional environment this person was dealing with that was keeping them stuck, giving them kind of a dissonant kind of energy that really created a lack of motivation for them. So that's what we're going to focus on today in our continuing series on EQ fitness. As I have been saying, we're going to touch this topic at a high level in this episode. If you want more specifics, more details, more action steps in how to enhance emotional agility, please go to our website, eqfit.org, and check out the blog article for the week of November the 4th, 2024. So let's get into this concept of emotional agility. And I'll start with a couple of stories that I think will help to explain what I mean by this. I started working with a group of IT consultants many years ago, and I've really enjoyed my time with them. I continue to work with them today and in the future, and I'm excited about where they have been and where they're going. So within that group are 4 leaders that have kind of come up through the ranks and very good at what they do. They do cloud migration, and they do data lakes, and they do Snowflake, and they do all kinds of these wonderful technology things in Azure and AWS, and I've learned more about technology with them in the last few years than I probably need to know, but it's really cool to kind of understand their business. But let me focus on those 4 leaders, because when I started with them, they were basically technicians. And were they leading projects? Yes, but they weren't really leading people, even though there were other people working on those projects, not from a true leadership perspective. And the thing that was standing in their way of growing in their leadership were emotional drivers that were keeping them from moving forward and feeling more confident about being able to lead the way they wanted to lead and the way that they knew they needed to lead. Well, the exciting thing is, fast forward several years, we've worked through a lot of that. They are literally running operations on their own now, managing a number of different people, doing a wonderful job. And that includes all the customers that they're taking care of and all of the projects, and the customers love them and they keep coming back to them for the next step and the next step, because they have built emotional agility that allows them to move forward. So instead of fear and frustration and judgment and doubt and all of those things that were keeping them stuck, now they have more excitement, more confidence, more courage, more curiosity about what's going on, that has really strengthened their emotional agility. The second story I'll share with you, I get the opportunity every once in a while to work with a young person more on a personal side of things than on a business side of things. And this young lady, wonderful lady in her 20s, a I'm a friend of her father's, and that's how we connected. And so I coached her for about a year and a half, and she was trying to figure out what to do with life and what to do with her career. And there were a lot of things going on for her in relationships and in work and in career, and trying to make some decisions and set some goals. And it was such a wonderful time, because when we started, she had a lot of anxiety and a lot of doubt and a lot of uncertainty. And a year and a half later, I got that phone call that I absolutely hate and love at the same time. And that's the phone call that she calls me and says, Steve, I think we're done. I think I'm ready to go on my own. Really appreciate what you've done for me. Now, I hate it because I love working with people. I love it because her growth through that time period was pretty great. And she has reached a point of confidence and assurance in her life that she can really move forward. And that came from emotional agility, because all of the fears and the doubts and the uncertainty and all the stuff she was dealing with over that period of time, she changed her emotional environment into a place where she was more confident, more assured. She felt better. There was less uncertainty in her life. She built some processes that she put into her life from our work together that allowed her to make better decisions on a regular basis. And frankly, she just built up her emotional agility. And I have a really good friend, David, who gave me a quote several years ago that I use all the time. And I thank David for this every time I use it, which is, you only have the internal resources to deal with the next challenge or take advantage of the next opportunity that you have built up to that point. Emotional agility is an internal resource, just like a lot of other internal resources we have. So let's get into emotional agility and how important it is. If you own a company, if you're a leader in an organization, if you're an individual contributor, if you're a stay-at-home parent, if you're retired, it doesn't make any difference. Emotional agility is something that's going to positively impact just about every aspect of our lives. Our connection, our communication, our collaboration, our ability to lead well, our ability to lead ourselves well, the way that we build trust with people. There are so many positive outcomes as we enhance emotional agility. And what is it? It's the ability to recognize, to manage, to move through emotions more productively without becoming stuck or being overwhelmed. That sounds like a pretty good thing, right? It involves a balance of emotional awareness, acceptance, and intentional response. Those two words are so important. Intentional response. We want to be intentional with our choices and with our decisions. We also want to respond instead of react. Respond is a more thoughtful, considered approach. Why is this important? Why should we need to build our emotional agility? Well, let me say one word: change. Change is the only constant in life really anymore. So in an environment where change is constant, emotional agility allows us to face those challenges constructively rather than reactively. That's why emotional agility is so important. It's a foundation for adaptability and adaptive thinking. It helps us to quickly recover from setbacks, and it helps us to keep moving forward with purpose. All of those are very good things. So, how does this then connect to emotional intelligence? Well, emotional agility is a component of emotional intelligence. It goes beyond just awareness to include intentional, strategic action. The ability to adapt emotionally helps us to enhance personal resilience and makes decision making more intentional. And more resilience is something we all want. So let's get to where we look at emotions, because a lot of people will say, oh, there's good emotions and bad emotions. I don't think of emotions that way. There may be comfortable and uncomfortable emotions, but I don't really think of them as good or bad. If you step off the sidewalk onto the street, you look to the left and there's a huge truck coming at you at high speed, I hope you feel fear, which most people would say, oh, fear is a bad emotion. Not in that case, it's not. It's going to give you the adrenaline boost you need to move faster than you've ever moved before, which is exactly what we want to see. So let's take some time now and start to differentiate between useful and unuseful or unhelpful emotions. Okay, if we're going to differentiate between helpful and unhelpful emotions, it starts with recognizing our emotional triggers. So useful emotions signal important values or priorities that we have, while unhelpful emotions often can be tied to stress or to defense mechanisms. Differentiating the two involves noticing our habitual responses and understanding the underlying reasons. Again, I've shared this before, I'll share it again. 43% of our daily actions are done habitually, which means with very little or no thought. That is almost half. So if we're going on autopilot and just letting our patterns or our habits take over, there's all kinds of room for error and mistakes and creating issues that didn't need to be created. So recognizing emotional triggers is very important. Differentiating between the two, helpful and not helpful emotions, and noticing our patterns, recognizing patterns being another skill set of emotional intelligence, those can help us to become more emotionally agile. So emotions like curiosity, determination, and empathy can often motivate more positive actions. But things like fear, anger, or self-doubt, those can hold us back. Now, these insights come from understanding the neuroscience of emotions and how certain emotional states can either limit or enhance our emotional clarity. Again, the more that we have emotional agility, the more we can access our higher thinking processes and functions. And we can make better decisions. We can take better actions going forward. So we want to engage in reflecting. We want to think about ways to keep track, to be mindful of where we are and where our emotions are. Keeping track of emotional responses to our decisions and our experiences can help to identify our patterns and our habits. All of that can ultimately make it easier to focus on emotions that are more constructive. And that's where we want to go. So now, how do we stay calm and focused during challenge or change? I think that's an important thing we've got to look at. Well, first off, we need to think about the neuroscience of what happens. If you're triggered with a strong emotion or an emotion of any kind, the intensity of that is going to diminish over about 6 seconds. Unless we re-engage the same thought and we get ourselves into a cycle. So if we understand that being mindful of where we are and understand the science behind how emotions work, then we can actively be more intentional about what we do with our emotions. And the emotions are going to happen. You cannot stop from having the emotions, and I wouldn't want that to stop. But it's what we do with them that's important. So mindfulness helps regulate our brain stress response, keeping the prefrontal cortex active That's the executive part of our brain that does the heavy thinking and heavy lifting so that we can think more clearly. That's an important part of what we need to be able to do. So deep breathing, just being mindful, doing some grounding exercises, even taking a walk, anything that will help get us out of reactionary mode into a more responsive mode, a more reflective before we respond mode, that's a good thing. Also, we can think about reframing those challenges. When we're faced with change or a challenge, reframing techniques help us to shift our perception from possible loss to possible opportunity. That just shifts everything, doesn't it? This mental shift reduces anxiety. It builds a mindset that's more open to positive possibilities, which aligns with more of a growth-oriented approach, which is exactly what we want. We want to take our experiences and leverage those for growth and development. So we can also, at the same time as we're doing these things, we can build resilience in ourselves. So daily routines like short morning reflections or journaling, even a walk at lunch or something that allows your brain to disengage from what it's been focused on so it can assimilate what's going on. It has time to refresh itself. That's so important. Our brains use a ton of energy, and we need to give our brains rest every once in a while. Some of the research that I've seen suggests that the best way to do your work on a daily basis is in 60 to 90 minute segments with a 15 to 20 minute segment break in between, so that you can be highly productive in those shorter time frames, and you will actually get more done and make better decisions that way and be more productive. It would take some discipline to do that, but I think it's a direction we should consider. So as we talk about emotional agility, we also need to consider emotional flexibility and how that plays into what we're doing, what we're thinking about here. Emotional flexibility involves viewing different perspectives, letting go of rigid beliefs, and remaining open to learning. So instead of a fixed mindset, it's an open learning mindset. It is practicing empathy, empathy being another skill of emotional intelligence. Can you see things from other people's perspectives? Will you truly listen to what other people have to say? Well, this flexibility is going to give you the option to create more agility down the road because you're not so rigid, you're not so set in your ways. Because here's what it comes down to. If you're rigid and set in your ways and you're not open and more willing to listen and learn and all of that, then anything that doesn't agree with your mindset is going to be an attack on you. And you're going to treat it in a defensive manner, which is not going to help you with motivation or mental agility or emotional agility. And in our world today, flexibility is so important. Agility is so important. So we also want to embrace emotional flexibility to reevaluate our assumptions, because our assumptions can get us into trouble. We all know that. So particularly, this is valuable in working with other people, with teams, because it allows us to support different perspectives and build collaborative and cohesive cultures. That is critical. And you may have the right answer, but in my experience, I've learned that the right answer is not always the right answer. If being right is more important to you in a relationship than working together and collaborating and getting the best possible results, feel free to go ahead and be right, but you're never going to get where you want to go very easily that way. That's an ego thing, and that's a real problem when it comes to creating emotional agility. We want to be open to opportunities that may seem to be intimidating. We want to encourage practices like seeking feedback, setting stretch goals, and intentionally engaging in new experiences so we can stretch our emotional comfort zones. And I don't care whether that's at work or at home or wherever you are. All of those things are very important if you want to develop more resilience, which is a direct outcome of greater emotional agility. So whether we like it or not, we all live in a fast-paced world where change happens all the time, it seems like. So how do you cultivate emotional agility in this fast-paced environment that we live in? Well, we can be proactive. We can set up consistent routines like morning check-ins, practices of gratitude, thankfulness, to create a mental reset point, which grounds us in what we can control amid the things we can't control. Amid the things we can't control. And that's important because all of us want some level of stability in our lives. Even someone like me who loves change, loves to do different things, loves variance in my life, I still want some level of stability in what I'm doing, in the way I approach things, so that I can maintain high levels of emotional agility and flexibility. And so we can be proactive in setting up certain rules that we live by, in setting up certain practices we put in place that give us the opportunity for our brains to rest, to hit the reset button, to assimilate the information, to move forward so that we're operating at our highest level on a consistent basis. So there are different strategies like pause and choose, which encourages a brief reflection before you react to something. I think that's a great practice to put in place. And it's going to help because remember, it takes about 6 seconds for that emotion to diminish in intensity that you're having. So if somebody triggers you at home, at work, no matter where you are, if you will pause and then choose, you know what they do too? And this is the funniest part of this. They will look at you like, wow, that's a really thoughtful person. They're really thinking through what I said. They must be wise. Honest to goodness, if you want to look wise, do this pause and choose approach. It works. And I'm not sharing any secrets here or anything else. It's just amazing to me how much your stock goes up with other people when you practice this pause and choose kind of approach. And that also is going to help you be more intentional, which is exactly what we want. If it's making decisions or what am I going to say next or whatever. And I'll tell you, if you're in sales or business development, this is for you. You need to not be thinking about what you're going to say next while the person you're talking with is talking. You need to actively listen and then pause and choose what you're going to say next. Because, and I'll do this in another episode, I've got an entire methodology for magnifying sales success by leveraging emotional intelligence. But here's what I know. People will tell you exactly what you need so that they close the sale themselves instead of you having to figure out how to close the sale if you'll practice some of these things. So that's just a little bonus thing for anybody who's doing business development in your organization or even fundraising. It works just as well in fundraising. So we want to develop practices like that help us be proactive so that we don't get caught up and go, oh, I got to respond immediately, or what you're really doing is reacting. And then I would highly recommend emotional intelligence training. And we've got a wonderful course at our website, eqfit.org, called Emotional Intelligence for Life and Work. And I highly recommend. I mean, it's an online course. There are many times during the year I give a significant discount for that course. You can go and check it out, and it really is going to make a difference. But because if you think about this, you are developing resources and skills that are going to benefit you for the rest of your life. Practicing emotional agility through intentional skill building. Things like self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skills, motivation, the 5 major components of emotional intelligence, those provide resilience in increased amounts for you, and it prepares you to face challenges calmly and strategically. You're not doing away with the emotions. You're not suppressing your emotions. You're leveraging emotions and emotional intelligence to help you with your rational, logical approach to give you the best possible outcomes. And that's going to allow you to keep pace with anybody. If you want a competitive advantage for yourself, for your team, for your organization, it comes through emotional agility, which is a component of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence will give you a competitive advantage in the workplace. If you look at all the major publications, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, so many of them have been talking for years about the importance of emotional intelligence. Now remember, if you want more detailed information on emotional agility, go to our website, eqfit.org, look for the blog article for the week of November 4, 2024, that talks about building emotional agility. And you can get more depth, more insight, and action steps to move forward. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions about this week's episode, or maybe a suggestion for future episodes you'd like us to explore, please contact us through our website at eqfit.org. For more information and inspiration, connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at EQFit.